welcome Ed, Ravo, Slug to my office.
Hello, James.
How's it feel?
God, well, the aircon's nice, isn't it? I was
lovely.
absolutely beading. Well, with Ravo driving through London, he did not have a clue. There were sounds coming out of his mouth I've never heard in my life driving through Piccadilly Circus.
I was going to say, how about that ride in? I wanted to say that. It's been a week since the ride.
Yeah.
The
How
start.
good? How good?
I'm not judging every road now, like I'm on a bike. Oh, this would be hard, wouldn't it? I wouldn't, I wouldn't want to do this on a bike.
The ironic thing is, as a driver of the car, I hate cyclists.
There was a couple today in London that were irritating.
Yeah, well, I mean, the London cyclists are different, but on a bike, I hated cars.
Yeah. I mean, well, that point where you nearly fell off your bike, where there was all that traffic. Do you remember where Jim nearly fell off his bike, the tyre burst, we all carried on.
The back wheel effectively fell off.
I worried for your life, but it didn't stop me.
That is the funny thing, right? So for the listeners here, we've skipped the kind of where it all began to the point where I nearly lost my life on a fast main road, and the cycle was that hard that whenever there was an incident, no fucker stopped. Like, none of us stopped. Apart from Billy 12 Trees, we'll get onto him. No one stopped. And that was the perfect example. We were going, and I'll tell you why. We're going downhill at probably 30, 40 miles an hour. Yeah. Where were we? We don't even know.
Well, I don't know. I was delirious by that stage.
It was that hot. We don't know where we were. My back wheel locks up at 30 miles an hour. Let's call it 50 miles an hour. I've never been quicker. And I don't know what happened, but the back wheel nearly fell off. And I am skidding. Apparently, I look unbelievable. The lads were saying behind. Well, everyone was behind me. I'm skidding down the hill like that. And
it was only me. It was behind.
No, I was behind. I was behind with Fraser.
Did I look good?
Well, you just let out a squeal. that was, you let out a squeal. I worried and panicked for you for the 3 seconds it took me to go past you. And then I worried about the hill that I had to climb next.
That was the thing, because of the hill in front, because no one wanted to stop, ever. Because if they saw a hill in front of them, like your tyre burst, Rave, and I heard it explode behind me.
Tommy stopped. There was one person who stopped when mine exploded, which was like a shotgun.
I was like, leave him. Leave him. It was unbelievable. Like, when we were in it, Slates, when we were in it, it was hard. And we'll definitely talk about it. But it's been a week now, and I'd arguably say that's up there with the best 3 days of my life.
I loved it, Jim. But what's even better is every day something new comes back to you. You know, when you finish it, you're exhausted, and you kind of remember like 2 or 3, maybe 4 moments, usually when you arrive somewhere and how you felt then. And then each day afterwards, you start thinking, oh, do you remember when, Ravo had three people push.
I said to my wife, she said, oh,
I can't even get it out.
She said, how did Ravo finish it? I said, well, effectively he didn't. I was like, he got over the finish line. And the funny thing was, whenever we saw a hill, it was like, no, you were just like, no. And then I'll just ride past you. And then someone would scream for Billy 12 Trees, and he'd put his hand on your back. And then he was getting tired towards the end. And then Charlie Sharp, how does 2 or 3 people push someone up a hill?
Say what you said to me yesterday about the pushing up the hill. What you were thinking when they let go of you, when they were too exhausted to push anymore. Which I think is fair enough.
When we got to the Cotswolds one, and it was ridiculous. Even Bill was getting tired, and he'd be like, "You got to do it yourself now, mate." And I'd be out of the saddle, just praying. I'd just hear, "Sit down," and then I'd sit down, and I'd just feel his palm. He'd be like, "You all right, Slug?" I'd be like, "No, mate, absolutely not."
It's great. I mean, who came up with the idea? I mean, you left me a voice note the week before and said you fancy doing a bit of a bike ride. And then it turned into an epic challenge over 3 days.
Well, it was Luds and Fraser, because obviously you don't want to start going, right, well, I've got some ideas for myself. Let's go, get drawing board out. And I'm thinking that, so Luds and Fraser go, well, we want to do something. We've got a week off. Why don't we do a bike ride? We can get some bikes, jump on it. And then it's like, well, let's do Gloucester to Leicester, your old club. That sounds good. Not much of a challenge, so let's go down to maybe Twickenham, Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Then Fraser said, well, that's not much of a challenge. You probably need to get back to Gloucester, which coming out of Fraser's mouth. And he says he regrets that, actually.
Looking,
He got to Twickenham and he said, I regret that.
I'm not surprised. He was the one at the very end. It's called bonking. Sounds an unbelievable word, but he bonked on the last bit.
The shaky hands,
The
and
shaky
the pale
hands,
face,
and he turned into the
glazed
grey
eyes.
man. Yeah,
he was a terrible state. So that's how it came about, and then it was then it was like, how do we get everyone on this? So I don't think I've had lots of people say, short notice, isn't it? Like a lot to do, short notice. But actually, I think that added to it, because if I'd had time to prepare, I think I might have been scared by it.
you would have realised how hard it was to cycle 100
'cause
miles.
in my head, I was sat on a watt bike for 350 miles, just flat. I'm not cycling, no idea. So 15 miles in, I was like, we hadn't even got anywhere near Broadway yet. And I was like, oh my God, I'm absolutely knackered. And I can't pull out. I can't find a reason. It's not my bike. If it was my bike, I might have thrown it in the bush or down a hill accidentally. But it wasn't even my bike, so I couldn't do that. So then I just sought reassurance in the state of Ravo. We're delirious by Twickenham, weren't we? I was rooming with Fraser. And we just both got into our beds, switched the light off. We were like deliriously laughing about. We were coming up. We were playing. That stupid game of scenarios. What would you do? I kept going to him. Why are you so scared of going downhill on a bike? Like, what's wrong with you? It's the one enjoyable thing about it. And you're like latching onto your brakes as if you're going to fall off. And he said, well, I'm just cycling down. He said, I've got this tiny, skinny little wheel in front of me. Doesn't look like it can carry my weight. And I just worry that I'm going to fall off. The clothes my clothes aren't going to protect me. So I'm just thinking about that going down the hill. So that's why I slow down. So we end up then, I reckon, for about an hour doing scenarios. What would you do if?
I don't even know where this is going.
It's so stupid, but we're going fucking. I don't know if we
You
can
can
swear.
fucking swear. Of course we can.
He said,
It's a bit of fucking Big
we're
Jim
going,
show.
Fucking hell, how sore's the gooch, and your knob gets numb, doesn't it? Because it's stuck on this skinny saddle. He said, if I fell off my bike, worst case scenario for me would be my clothes rip off.
My serotonin's
I
back.
can't believe we're talking about this, but it sounds so stupid. He's going, worst case scenario for me is I fall off the bike, my clothes rip off. He said, when I'm riding the bike, my cock's about a centimetre long. So he said, if I fell off the bike, I was on the road, sprawled out, my cock's hanging out. He said people would be looking for my cock.
Like it had fallen off.
Like it'd been burnt off by the road. They'd be looking for a chub somewhere. Because they'd be worried that I'd lost it. So he said, in that situation, he said, honestly, I'd rather die. That's what he's going, if that happened, I'd rather die. But that's how delirious we were. We'd just lying in bed in pitch flat, just talking about how much would you pay not to cycle back to Gloucester tomorrow? Do you know what I mean? He's going, well, maybe. I said, what about if they said 50 grand, otherwise that's it, you have to cycle? And he's genuinely going, would I be able to get 50 grand to get there? Do you know, we had about an hour of this. We were absolutely out of it.
How funny was Goody? He turned up for literally the last 8 miles.
Fell off 3 times.
We spoke about it about how tired and delirious people were. Goody's obviously done that last stretch. And we've gone down that hill to the first set of traffic lights. He's never wore cleats before. We've all stopped. He's not took his feet out. And he has just stacked it with his feet still in the bike. No one even smiles. No one even laughs. I looked at him.
Leave him.
And he's just looking everyone was that full.
Well, you were laughing.
I was
You were
pissing
laughing.
myself.
I had like a blank stare just looking at him. I was actually laughing inside. I was laughing inside, but I couldn't get it out. I was that tired. I just ended up looking like a dead man staring at him.
He made out that he did the whole day on his social media. Yeah, I was with the lads yesterday. He did 8 miles on the flat. That was it.
Yeah, riding up front as well.
Yeah, taking videos. The group that did it, you mentioned Luds, right? Skipper, Lewis. Now, you talk about the club allowing the players, and obviously we'll get into the reasons why we all did it and why Skipper was allowed to do it. He had 3 surgeries in the last couple of months or whatever. So he had his hand in a brace.
Yeah.
He'd had his shoulder
Reconstructed
a few weeks before. Did he have his...
And his ankle.
Let's say that he had his ankle fused. Let's make it sound a bit harder.
Yeah.
Oh,
He had his ankle fused.
All through in the off-season, so before that bike ride.
And he was meant to have his neck. They were looking at his neck, weren't they? And he went, I'll do that next year.
Not one moan.
Not one moan.
He wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell he wanted. Like, I could feel him next to me, and he said, "What the fuck?" once, and that's because Rave was slowing us up. So, what a machine!
I don't want to blow too much smoke up his backside, but I definitely think he's top 2 or 3 toughest blokes I've played with, like comfortably. Like Tom Youngs would be one of the other ones. I've got to come up with a third now. I said top 3. So
You've not played with me though.
no, I haven't played with you, Jim. Top 3 toughest players against. Then you're in that, aren't you?
Would I? Yeah,
And
definitely.
Then Lou Deeks. Let's just
Yeah.
put Lou. He's because he's a hero.
He's good on the
right?
bike as well. Of course he is.
He's good on the bike, and he's a hero. So we'll put them 3 together. I think that's well, in my eyes, that's a decent compliment for lads.
Yeah.
Well, you say that as well. I said to Rave that Alex Brown is the poshest hard bloke I've ever played with. The hardest posh bloke. How do you say it?
Hard as posh bloke.
The hardest posh bloke I have ever played with. Someone who speaks so posh, he looks posh. Absolutely nails.
Was he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Didn't
He
you
was.
wrestle on day? What you had a pre-season? You had to wrestle.
And I'm thinking Alex Brown is a line-out call who wears number 5 on his back.
Yeah, we don't
You know what I
like
mean?
fives, do
Lanky,
we?
just like, mate, where are you? Nails.
No, as you said then, there's a lot of people who all of a sudden made this happen because you're very right. A week out, it was 4 people stood by a bin outside the training ground saying, how are we going to do this then? Google Maps, we're going to drive. So it ended up coming together with a huge shift from the Zeus cycling. So Darren, Clayton...
10 out of 10.
Absolute 10 out of 10.
You struggle to see a better looking man.
No, so he did the Gallagher ride for Prem Rugby, so we then had a call with him, explained what we were doing, and I think he quickly felt sorry for us and was like, there is no way you boys can do that.
He was on
without
holiday,
support."
wasn't he? He was away on holiday. Flew back, organised it all within a few days.
Yeah, so he was obviously those guys, Darren and his dad, Barry in the support car, as you mentioned.
I was in the support car for 8 miles because my bike exploded. Barry, you need to sort out your aircon, mate. 'Cause I was boiling in the
Barry
front of the
wasn't
car.
happy towards the end. I thought Barry was on the bike sometimes.
Well, he weren't happy because like we were taking so long to get to certain checkpoints. But anyway, Rafe,
So then, obviously, the 2 riders, Martin and Johnny, who
Legends,
I think
yeah.
we all can agree were incredible to make it easy not easy for us, as in we didn't have to think. We literally just needed to pedal. We were following them, and they were keeping us all together, which was incredible. And a massive shout out has to go to Rob Hughes and Tim Rogers of Gloucester, who were the support vehicle going ahead of us to every checkpoint. And setting it up, like I said, we were talking about it in the car on the way in. Like, even though we were that tired, pulling into those stops, and those boys were there with the food, the van, waters all set up, so they were enormous.
Rob's a legend, isn't he? Rob's going to drive now for Darren. He's going to
really?
do more events.
he was a legend, mate. Like,
Yeah.
he's salt of the earth, isn't he? He's like,
Yeah.
builder.
He's Lads' best mate, isn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, he loved it. Absolutely loved
Yeah,
it.
he was
wants to
wicked,
he wants
yeah.
more of it.
Do you want to go through some of these?
Oh, yeah. I think, Gary Spinks lent me the bikes from Milton Keynes Rugby Club, and he also put on all the food and everything from when we arrived there. So I have to say thank you to him. He's been brilliant. And Feisty Brewery. We're going to talk about we'll get to fight. We've talked about Feisty Brewery, but they were brilliant. That place was unbelievable. Wasn't it?
I've never seen a nicer house.
No.
I'll be honest.
No, with a microbrewery out the back.
And a dog that looked like a cat.
We've got sports rooms. So Chris Newsham at Sports Rooms very kindly sorted out the Marriott at Twickenham, Marriott at Leicester, the Brooklyn Hotel at Leicester. So that was
nice.
very kind of those guys to just sort that for us. So again, we didn't have to worry about anything, just pulling into those two stadiums.
And Nicole at the club, Nicole McLennan, she's been first class. How good's Nicole, by the way?
Brilliant.
At Gloucester. She's only come in the last few months, really, hasn't she? So she's had a load thrown at her. And she's taken this on, no problem, like wants to help. So she's been amazing. And then the old wife, Jo. The old wife, Jo, running the social media.
Is she doing the social
She's
media?
doing social media, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the three kids haven't eaten a meal for a few days, but the posts were great.
And also the two policemen. They were called Gareth, the two Gareths.
Yeah,
right?
two
I
Gareths.
remembered them, yeah, because one of them is a big fan of the podcast, and he came up to me and said that. How good was that? How funny initially, because Fraser's obviously bonked when he's got there. He's got the shakes and stuff like that. He's absolutely hanging. And then we kind of had this bet, didn't we, that last one to Kingsholm gets tasered by Gareth. How about that ride into Kingsholm?
That was class, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a little bit emotional.
What do you mean a little bit?
Well, yeah, it was very emotional, wasn't it? It was very emotional. Well, so you nearly set me up. You were going,
I was crying when I saw two people at the side of the road when we were coming down that first
Yeah.
thing. I said to you that then. I wasn't then expecting us to pull around the corner to a noise like that.
I were gone. I were blubbering. Like, as in, serotonin levels were low. Do you know what I mean? Fraser, he was, I think he thought he was still getting tasered. So I had to say to him, look, you're not getting tasered. We're going in there. But I think for me, the reasons why we did it, and we're going to get into that now, but I just think Gloucester's one of them great clubs, as Leicester, but Gloucester's a little bit different. It just, and I kind of forget about that. I fell out of love with Gloucester a little bit. They were abusing me when I was at Saracens. They were throwing money at me, which was fake.
Were they
banter.
really?
Yeah, they
Did
were,
you get
yeah.
abuse off them
A
when
little
you came
bit,
back?
yeah. And then it was the whole salary scandal with Saracens, and they were throwing fake money at me, and they took Wolfpack Lager off the beer taps.
Is that when Sanderson came out with that quote?
What was it?
The Taylor Swift one?
No, that was
Hate's gonna
after.
hate,
Yeah. I know he came after. Great man, Sanders.
Yeah.
But the minute we pulled round that corner and you felt the energy and you saw the people, we were like, this is a special, special club.
I count myself very lucky to have played for a club like Leicester and a club like Gloucester. They're two great clubs.
Proper-
like you
like
said.
proper rugby clubs.
rugby clubs, yeah. That's why when I did go to Gloucester, it wasn't hard in the end because they ticked all those boxes. If you're going to play for a club, you want to be able to buy into it easily, don't you?
Yeah.
And you can buy into Gloucester in no time with the support they have. Everything's built around the rugby club. I didn't expect the welcome. I know you think I'm just saying that, but I thought, there'd be a few people. It'd be nice. I know the club are putting on a little bit of a do, but it was actually ridiculous, wasn't it? The noise, and you didn't see them till you turned the corner, did you? So saw a couple of people
A
outside.
few flags.
Outside the ground. And then the gates of the Lions Den opened up, and you suddenly were like, "What on earth is going on here?" Hold yourself together.
Yeah.
Hold your bowels in.
I think that it had been a tough 3 days, and I think there were parts of it where we were all questioning, like we were saying, whether or not we'd get through it. And then we go back to the reasons why we did it. And, when you asked me to do it, I was like 100%. I'm in.
Oh, mate, that blew me away as well. Like, you didn't, no hesitation. No, you didn't even want much information. I know Ravo told you it was 300 miles when you actually did ask for a bit of detail. No hesitation. I was blown away by that, mate.
I think Slate's, if we get into it now and talking about it, when we heard about your diagnosis, I know you've had a few months to process it, and it's you that we're talking about, so it might seem a bit weird. I've never done an interview like this where we're talking about something like this, but I think when we heard about your diagnosis, I think it floored a lot of people. And, obviously working a little bit with Doddy and the foundation there, but I think everything like surrounding you, obviously your age, the fact that you're still playing
Yeah.
at the time, and I think that that's where we were like 100% we're in. Let's just go back a little bit then. I know we've had a kind of couple of conversations when we're on the bike, chatted to your brother a little bit as well. It's, you know, it was so nice to have that connection over them 3 days. And I know it's a story that you've kind of told and one that you're going to have to tell going forward, but a lot of the listeners of this will listen to the podcast and they'll know they would have followed the journey over the last 3 days. But this is a process that you've been through for the last kind of few months, and learning a little bit about you personally on the ride in terms of like to be in control. Like, you wanted to know, how far is it, right? It's 10 miles. Just tell me it's 10 miles. Don't tell me it's 10 miles and it's 20. You want to be in control of the situation. And this is a situation that you find yourself not in...
Out of control, completely out of control. Well, it started in October last year, and I just was getting muscle twitches in my arms. And, you know, we all know you've had muscle twitch, you know, when you get them in your quad after weights, or, you know, you get a twitch or your finger twitches, and it doesn't last more than, you know, a bad one would be an hour maybe, or a couple of hours. Well, I mean, these arrived. It's so strange how it happens, but it's like I woke up one morning with these twitches, and then they've never left. You know, I still twitch now, to this day, and I probably will do for as long as it goes on. But they started, and after a couple of days, you start to go, this isn't really meant to be happening. But you just kind of ignore it. You know, there are lots of things, and you shouldn't ignore it. But I think that's in our nature, isn't it, as rugby players, whether it's injuries or things going on, you just go, well, it's happening, and I can get on with it. You know, it was difficult to deal with, you know, at night times, because your arms are jerking all over the place, and you're going, what on earth is going on here? But I wasn't getting any weaker. You know, my grip strength was fine at that
Still
point. Still training, yeah. No problems there. Didn't say anything to anyone. You know, my wife knew, obviously, but that was it. Just kept it completely to myself. And then after about, you know, this went on for another 2 months, they were still there, day in, day out, 24/7. You know, my wife was even saying, you know, that it's happening in your sleep as well, because I didn't know whether while I was sleeping if they switched off or not. So she was going, look, they're happening in your sleep as well. So it was 24/7. And then towards the end of December, I'm in the gym. I noticed like picking up a dumbbell. I can't, you know, and it wasn't a heavy dumbbell, but my wrist wasn't strong enough to, you know, pick it up and put it on my lap ready to do some weights. So again, stupidly just went, it'll be all right. It's not that bad. Once I get it up there and I lift it, it's not actually that weak. You know, you start coming up with little excuses. But along those 2 months, you know, I know Tom and Ben Youngs unfortunately lost their cousin Jake to MND. And, you know, me and Fraser knew Jake, and Fraser's known throughout as well, actually. You know, I was speaking to him a lot, and the first thought of MND came when we were talking about it. He said, we spoke to Jake, and he said one of his first symptoms was muscle twitches, just constant muscle twitches, so in his arms as well. So you're going, I've got constant muscle twitches. I know Jake said that. So we're kind of toying with the idea that it could be serious, but almost looking for signs that it wasn't as well. So it was a horrible position to be in, because you were worried sick, but you also didn't want to let anyone know, because you felt if you let someone know, then it became more real. Whereas if I kept it to myself, or, you know, my wife or Fraser, I had control of it. Like you're saying, I had control of it, and, you know, I could kind of lead this normal life. But actually I realised, you know, my arm was starting to get weaker and weaker. So in the end, it got to January, my arm became fairly weak. But I was sent to a neurologist, spoke to the club doctor, Karen, who's been amazing, Owen Power as well. They were straight on it. Sent me to see a neurologist, and I went to see him. And again, you know, stupidly, but this is just what happened, is I saw him. We did some blood tests. We looked at my neck to see if there's a pinched nerve. We looked at my shoulder to see if there were pinched nerves. Anything basically to try and rule out the worst case scenario. But nothing showed up. Shoulder was clear, neck was clear, bloods were clear. And he did some, you know, basic strength tests on me, but I was I was stronger than your average person, so I could kind of mask it a little bit. And he was doing these tests, and well, strong. I had to push him away, and a little bit like the HIA shoulder test, trying to push your shoulders out, no problem. So he was like, well, they're just twitchers. You haven't lost strength. It's been going on for 3 months, so I'd say probably benign fasciculations, it's called. So that was like a green light for me. Perfect. I hadn't told him fully the weakness in my arm. I just let him do his test, tried my best, and thought maybe I can just fool him, as you do, try and cheat the test. And he said, yeah, I think it's benign fasciculations. And so I went away from that and went, great, I'm not going to go see him again. No problem, just crack on training, playing. Well, obviously from about January, February, the arm really dropped off to about May. I mean, it was ridiculous, to the end where I said to one of the physios, I said, have you got some exercise I can do? My left arm's just a bit weak. And he's going, you've been out injured, you broke your foot, you haven't done anything, you haven't been tackling people, la la la. So why's your arm so weak? And then realised I had this neurology stuff, and he said, Ed, we have to speak to the doc about this. You can't keep pretending that your arm's just getting weaker and it's nothing related to the muscle twitches and whatnot. So in a way, I'd kind of been masking it for about 4 months. I hadn't told, again, it was still only Fraser knew, my wife knew, and I think my mum, that was it. That's how tight I'd kept it, really. And again, a control thing. If people don't know, then it's not happening. It's like, a little bit deluded. So anyway, once I realised we were going down the route of speaking to the doctor again, because my arm had become weaker and weaker, I knew what route it was going to go down. I knew there was going to be lots of tests. I knew there was nothing wrong with my neck and my shoulder. I knew there was nothing wrong with my bloods. So it really, an MND is diagnosed really on everything else being ruled out. That's all you're left with. There's not actually a test for.
So it's just a process of elimination.
It's a process of elimination. So I know from previous that everything had been eliminated. So I was going, well, it genuinely would take a miracle really for something to show up suddenly now. But I went back to see the neurologist. They did an EMG, which is where they stick lots of needles in your muscles, send electric pulses. They put pads on you, send electric pulses. And more or less, we did that test. And there's no easy way to do it. And he's obviously had to do it a few times. But it just kind of, I've looked at, I got the EMG. You get them instantly, these EMG results. And he said to me, this is about May, he said, there's lots of denervation in your arms. The nerves have stopped working really, which suggests, for me, motor neurone disease. So you come out of there a bit, you still haven't got a definitive answer, because he wants to refer you to a specialist. There's an MND clinic at John Radcliffe in Oxford. So you still come out of it going, he thinks it's that, but maybe there's still something else at play. I think that's just how the human brain works, is a little bit.
Well, and the fact that you've played rugby and neck problems, shoulder problems,
and I started to let a few more people in my inner circle know that what was going on, and everyone's attitude was a little bit similar. Like, well, you've been playing rugby for years, so there's probably going to be some sort of damage. There's no way. I mean, you're 33 years old, and it just doesn't make sense. And I can understand that, but then. You start, by that point, I start to realise that, I said to you on the bike ride, didn't I? I knew really deep down something wasn't right. And you do, when you're playing rugby, you get a good feel for your body, don't you? Knocks, niggles, whether something's serious enough to keep you out, or whether you're able to train and play on it, you start to get a good feel for your body. So by that point, I was kind of in that, something's not right. My arm was I lost dexterity in my hand, I mean, it's really slow now, but at that point I realised like my reactions to try and catch things completely skew with. So I just basically waited to be referred to this MND clinic in Oxford, and it was like purgatory, really. That space, I kind of didn't want to. I said to my mum at the time, I remember saying, well, he thinks it's that, so is there any point in going to see someone else? I might as well, if it's going to be that, it's going to be that, and I might as well just get on with things rather than going for more tests and seeing another specialist, because the reality of it is it's extremely dark, isn't it? You know, so in some ways you're going, well, I'll just live with the possibility that it could be that. There's a good chance it's that, but I don't want it definitive. You know, I can kind of live in a space where it's not. But you got young kids, you got responsibilities, all sorts. So you just, you know, it's fight or flight, really, isn't it? That's kind of the flight response. Don't really want to face up to the reality of it's too bleak. So I spent probably a couple of weeks in that space, but then realised, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you can't live like that. You lived 11 months really like that, not knowing, is it that, is it not, could it be, is your arm getting weaker every day? And so I went to the MND clinic, and then, I mean, he did the examination I'd done in January, and completely different. It was, there you go, I've seen this, yeah, that's motor neurone disease. And that's from January to, well, when did I have it? June, I think it was. Was it June? No, sorry, July. January to July, the difference in, you know, how I presented. I was able to fool the neurologist at the time. I'm not proud of, but that's just what you do. Sometimes as a human being, you don't want to face that reality. So I was able to do that in January. By the time he saw me in July, it was like a different animal. It was so obvious to him. He didn't need to do anything else other than that examination. He sat down and said, "You've got ALS, you've got MND." So I'd prepared myself for that leading up to the appointment. Obviously, I'd had I think it is motor neurone disease from Geraint Fuller. So I had about a month before the appointment, because I basically delayed it, wanted a holiday. So I prepared for that when he actually told me, and that wasn't the bit that upset me. That was like, in some strange way, getting that definitive answer after the last 10, 11 months. Well, it actually put you a little bit at peace, really, because you thought, right, I know it's that now. That's what it is. And in some way, that was a bit of an easier place to live than, oh, you know, is it that? Is it not? What's going to happen? You know, I don't know. I don't have enough information here, which sounds bizarre. So that was the whole process. But one thing I didn't touch on that now I look back is, during that 10 months, I would, like, in and around the house, because my arm was getting weaker, I knew my arm was getting weaker. I've got like hand grips everywhere. Do you know what I mean? You know, like the weightlifters' hand grips.
The old school metal things.
Yeah. I've got them around the house, so I'm like testing that every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm doing press ups in the lounge, going like, am I stronger today? Am I weaker today? Does it feel any different? That was exhausting for my wife, but any chance I get, I'd be like pushing my arm against something, and that was hell. That was honestly hell. Because
that mental battle, like, is it, isn't it?
Yeah. Constantly looking for markers or signs to try and find something that would take you off a different path from MND. But, you know, I'm sat here now with it, and it's not going to change. So my attitude towards it has changed a lot, actually, really, since that first, it could be motor neurone disease consultation I had. You know, that was kind of where I just started to go, this is the path I'm on, really. I know what's going to happen, more or less, at the MND clinic in John Radcliffe. I don't know why I'd go there unless it was going to lead down that path. So I kind of prepared from that point, which is probably why my attitude is what it is at the moment.
We have them chats, don't we? And we watch Doddy, and you look at Rob and stuff like that, and it's one of them where you hope it's not going to happen, you think it's not going to happen, and I think that well, I imagine that's the shock slates, is, you know what I mean?
I've definitely had that with, you saw Van der Westhuizen, didn't you? Doddy, Rob Barrow. You know, I didn't have this when they were all diagnosed, and I looked at it like most people and went, oh my God, felt unbelievably sorry for those guys. But actually the angle on it was that's probably one of my worst nightmares, because it is such a cruel disease. You know, the reality is that it strips you of everything apart from your brain, which in some ways you wish it did your brain as well, so that you weren't aware of it. But the fact that you sit in a body that you can't move, that you can't talk, that you struggle to swallow, I mean, it's a worse nightmare. You know, that's the reality of it. You know, and you have to think about it. I can't avoid that, because that's the path I'm on. So you have to consider it. How long you spend thinking about it is up to me. You know, that how long do I want to live in that space of where's it going, and I do have control over that, and that's hopefully if it'll be in a few years. You know, that's what I can hope for now, which sounds bizarre that you should be thinking in those terms, but there are unbelievable people that have been living with it for 6 years, 8 years. You know, a guy at Hambo Centre, Dave Needham, playing wheelchair rugby, can still speak, doing work in the gym. He's an incredible example for people with MND. I'm going to see him actually tomorrow. So there are little hope stories. You know, there's stories of hope of people with MND, but there are also really, really, really dark, horrible stories. And unfortunately, the majority are that side of the spectrum, I think, than the other side. So the unknown of that is difficult, but, you know, I've said it. We talk about living in the moment all the time, don't we? I've talked about it before this disease. I have to be a bit more present with the kids, and I have to be a bit more present with my job, and not think too much into the future and where I want to go and what I want to do. But it's very difficult. It's very difficult to do that with everything, you know, all the distractions you have. When you get diagnosed with this, I'll tell you what, it gets rid of a lot of stuff for you, and you have some real clarity and perspective, and that is genuinely where I'm at the moment. I'm very much enjoying each day as it comes, and what happens in the future is so out of my control. For someone that likes control, as you said, I'm actually at peace with that. It's out of my control, so why worry about it? You know,
What's been the hardest part of this initial phase? Because it's something that you've been consumed with for the last few months. Like, what's been the hardest bit up until now?
The hardest bit is telling people, and you know, we talked about it in the car, didn't we? Is, you know, it's obviously not nice news to receive, and it's actually really difficult to have to go off and tell people, ring them up and say this is happening. So that's probably been one of the toughest parts. Telling, I'm avoiding talking about the family because I find that difficult. So I'm trying not to go there. And Jim,
I think you can. So I think it's, if you want to, it's important, because I think people listening to this, and also the funding that's been pulled, and, you know, the amount of people that are aware of this disease, but also the amount of people that aren't. You know, you've gone into detail about what it's like and what the future looks like, and it's putting a person, but not just a person, not a rugby player, an ex-rugby player. It's putting a husband and a dad, behind this, and really trying to get the message over. You know, and I think that's why with yourself, Slates, without speaking for you, and you don't want to put an age. What age is a good age to get this, or what is a good age to not be here anymore? You know, Doddie's 52 now. You know, Rob's a young man. You know, Becky's mum passed away at kind of 68. You know, but the thing is with this, mate, you're 33, and you know, we need to get to a point where we live with hope. You live with hope, and something changes in the short term, but also the fucking message gets out there to the powers that be that something needs doing, and something needs doing yesterday, and today. And I think that is why we're going deep on the conversation with it. And, you know, I don't think anyone listening to this knows what you're going through, and you've stood there and you've spoken about it so courageously.
Yes, the thing is, you don't want too much sympathy, because I think that in the end makes you feel sorry for yourself. Do you know what I mean? You kind of just want that normality, which I get off plenty of people around me, which is great. But going back to the most difficult parts is other people don't know how to react to the news, and there is no right or wrong way. But you have to tell people, and sometimes what you don't realise, and I would have never realised it, is people put their own emotions on it or try and put themselves in your shoes, and that's not what you're asking of them. They obviously send their sympathies, or they're sorry and they're sad about things, but I can't be responsible for how they react to it. And sometimes, I've had this news, and suddenly it's like people expect that they should speak to me every day or ask me how I am every day, and that's actually more difficult for me, because you can't keep talking about your feelings every day to people, and that's sometimes other people's way of dealing with it. You give people that news, people that are close to you as well, and they, I don't know, like expectations suddenly change that they want to be with you every day, which I get, and they want to see you every day and like put plans in place. But that's not how you lived before it. Do you know what I mean? You might speak to them once every month, every couple of months, and have a good catch up, and that was that. And then suddenly it becomes very, very intense.
Yeah, so you're trying to live with some normality. And not be consumed by all these people when you can feel their energy and emotion.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite a difficult thing to explain, but you only realise it once it happens to you.
Like you said about the normality. You want the normality. Like if people wanted to know what you were doing every day, they can carry on doing that. But that's like your Joe, kids, immediate family. It puts a huge amount of pressure on you if all of a sudden everyone is like ringing you. Oh, what are you up to? Are you okay? You're like, well, mate, you ain't rang me before. Let's stick to how we always have been.
Yeah.
I need normality. That's someone else's emotions driving that. They need to respect yours.
Yeah, and that I'm offering it as a different angle. It's not being ungrateful, but it's a different angle to something I would have never have thought about. But I had a couple of people going, "Well, why didn't you tell me about the bike ride?" I didn't know anything about the bike ride, and I just thought, well, I didn't realise I had an obligation to start telling everyone close to me about everything I'm doing every day, and that they need to know every detail. And that's what I'm trying to say, is like people's expectations of you suddenly change, and that's really difficult, because I'm a part. I've got MND, yeah, but I haven't changed as a person. Do you know what I mean? I haven't changed as a person in terms of my personality or anything like that. But other people get that news and their expectations change a little bit, and it's like, well, it's a side to it that I just didn't even comprehend.
And that's why we're all moaning like fuck on the bikes. Do you know what I mean? And I think like it was I think you wanted that. That was us.
Yeah.
It was just you've basically put a group of guys together that can fucking moan the house down.
And that intentionally.
Yeah, exactly.
Intentionally, yeah. But you're right. But I want to hear other. Just because mine's sad and life-threatening and terminal and those things, like it doesn't mean I don't want to hear about your problems, or you might be having a bad day, or Ravo might be having a bad day, or he wants to have a rant about something going on. It doesn't matter if it's trivial compared to mine, because that's not what it's about. It's about normality. If you've got something wrong and I can help and we can talk about it, then I want to hear it. But I don't want things to constantly be compared against my situation. My situation is what it is, but it doesn't mean I can't have normal conversations with people. And I probably hadn't expected that side of things. But luckily, I've got lots of good... You know what rugby's like. It's fairly black and white, isn't it? And, it's not long before someone's taking the piss out of you. And you can laugh about it and everyone cracks on, and, you're walking around the place without a problem. So I'm lucky that I've got rugby, and we've got that changing room environment, really, and that mentality where kind of nothing's really off limits, is it?
Rugby element to it, and driving into Kingsholm, I think naturally you've been thrust into the limelight, not just you, but your family. Obviously, BBC have got behind it. I've been big shout out to them as well.
Yeah,
like Sally Nugent's been amazing. She's I mean, what a platform to get the word out there. And I shouldn't like BBC. They've never used me. They've never used me. But I love them now more than ITV. So no, I've followed Sally and what she's done for Rob and Doddy as well. But how are you being thrust into kind of that limelight for the reasons you are in that limelight, and how are you dealing with that as a family and trying to have that normality?
Yeah, I think I just see it as a responsibility, really, because like you say, Rob, the work since Doddy and Rob and Stephen Darby have been diagnosed has changed MND a lot. I know we're still miles away from where we want to get with MND and finding something that really helps slow progression or cures it. But they've done a huge. No, I didn't know anything about MND really before. I think the usual line is Stephen Hawking obviously had it, but outside of that, I don't think we'd ever heard of anyone that had it. ALS. We did the ALS bucket challenge. You remember that? But I'll be honest, when I was doing that, I didn't really know why I was doing it.
I didn't know what it was for until recently. Yeah.
And that all changed with Doddy and Rob and Sally Nugent highlighting that, and the BBC taking that story on, and really, Kev Sinfield. I mean, what a hero he is.
Funny when I went in to give him a hug.
We're not there yet, mate.
and he didn't hug me. I shook his hand and I went in for the. Did you know about this at the hotel? And I went in for the big kind of hug, and he didn't want it because he didn't. I don't know if he believed I'd finished the cycle. So if it was a Gloucester, he would have hugged me, I reckon. But yeah, you're right.
But not 90 miles in.
You've cycled 90 miles and you want a hug from me?
No respect.
Yeah. But what he's done as well in the profile.
What he's done. So, probably from the outside, looks like I've jumped on it very, very quickly. And we did. That bike ride was organised within 10 days, like we said. But that's, part of that is because physically I want to be able to do something that I'll remember, do something that I can do with mates that they'll remember, and we've had an amazing time, and do something that raises a profile of it and keeps it in the conversation, because like anything, probably, it was huge for a couple of years, 2-3 years, and probably just tailed off a bit. And the reality is I get diagnosed and it puts it back into the spotlight again. It's unfortunate I have to be the person that does that, but that's the card I've been dealt. So that's why I've jumped on it and gone, well, okay, well, let's push, the £50 million promise from the government. Like, well, why haven't they seen a penny? Rob and Doddy and Stephen have worked incredibly hard to push that through and get that commitment from the government. And they're just putting it to the bottom of the pile.
Why? Do we know why or not?
I mean, no, I don't know why. I don't know why, but, you just look at what's going on in politics. Oh, we don't want to get into politics.
What we can do, we'll look how fast the COVID stuff, and I know that's a wider thing because it involves every person on the planet, but how quickly they can deal with stuff like that. But, the promise was there for the 50 million. We all tweeted about it, not that that's a fucking thing, but we've all tweeted about it, we've all congratulated them, and then for whatever reason, I know Matt Hancock got asked the question about where it is, and and then like nothing's done. No,
well, no one knows really what's going on at the moment, do they, with politics or the government? So,
but where are they in terms of research, like as in the amount of kind of eyes and people, volunteers, but also the top people looking into longevity and looking into a cure? Like is there treatments, there are injections, are there things that people can do?
There's nothing with real solid evidence. That's the bizarre thing about it. You kind of get diagnosed, and reality is they don't know enough. There's a drug called Reluzole which has shown it might slow progression for 3 months, but 3 months, I think it has 50-60% chance of doing that. So really, it does nothing. It's pointless in my eyes anyway. I'm sure it's not for people that are taking it, but I looked at it and went, well, that's not doing a lot. Okay. What else is there? And then they're making small breakthroughs. There's a breakthrough recently around a drug that's actually you can be prescribed now for something else that's showing that it protects the motor neurone cells, and slows progression. But there's ongoing trials with that. A lot of stuff looking into your genetics. There's kind of, without completely sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but there's 3 kind of genes that they look at in your makeup that give you an idea about whether you may be susceptible to MND. So it's either hereditary, which mine wasn't, or there's a gene that if you're predisposed to, strenuous exercise, that there's some evidence that suggests that gene can mutate and turn into MND. And then they've found they've got another gene that they've seen has shown up with almost everyone that has MND. It's called like SOD1, I think it's called. They've got strange names and numbers, but so they're starting to understand the genetic makeup of it, but they still can't exactly tell you why it happens. There's absolutely nothing there. It's eat 4,000 calories a day, try and do as much exercise as you feel, and then more or less hope for the best. Do you know what I mean? When you actually break it down, it's madness. It's like, you have this, we'll support you. Lots of support out there, don't get me wrong, lots of support out there. And that's where I'm very lucky. But from a scientific medical point of view, it's
hope for the
best. Yeah, which is difficult to comprehend. So £50 million going into research would make a huge difference. There's already people doing massive work. Doddy and Jill Douglas at the Doddy Foundation has been incredible, and I want to add my voice to what they're doing. They're doing incredible work. It's not a space that I feel like I can go into and do something different. I think what Doddy's doing is absolutely brilliant, and so my main target will be helping Doddy and supporting Doddy's foundation, because they've got really good people on board, and I actually think they're pushing. What's the word? It's like disruptor, right? They're a little bit disruptive, trying to get things in motion.
Some people are talking about the correlation of playing a contact sport. You've mentioned the playing sport, and I had Professor Bill Ribbons, and we touched on MND, and he mentioned actually that they're potentially looking into coincidence or correlations of elite athletes, and if you've got a genetic something in there and you do both, then that could trigger something. But the one for me is people are starting to look now. Obviously, yourself mentioned Rob Burrow, Doddy Weir, Hughes van der Vestes, and there's been a number of footballers as well. Do you think anything towards that? Is there something deep down that might think that rugby? Because I think people say that they think when they hear motor neuron, they're thinking head.
Natural to assume there's a link. That was my first question when I was diagnosed. So Kevin Tobbett was, could it be related to head knocks? And he said, I thought that might be your first question. And there's absolutely no evidence to link head knocks and motor neurone disease. There's lots of research and evidence around CTE and things like that, but motor neurone disease it's not related to getting bangs on the head. We talked about genetic makeup. I think there's evidence around exercise and strenuous exercise and repeating that and the stress that has on your body. There's evidence around that, but nothing to do with head knocks. And motor neurone disease essentially is your brain still working fine. We know that from your body deteriorating, but your brain's working fine. And then you've obviously got lots of cables, wires that run down to your muscles that tell them to move, help you function. Obviously it happens in an instance, but basically you've got your brain telling you what to do. Lots of wires going to your muscles do the work. With motor neuron disease, there's a problem with the wires between the brain and the muscles. So the muscles want to work, the brain wants them to work, but something's happening in that middle bit, which I think is less. I'm not a scientist, so I don't want to go on and say something that might make me sound stupid. But as far as they're concerned, there's no link between head knocks and MND. There is a link between strenuous exercise, but I still astounded by the fact that I think it's 1 in 300 get diagnosed with MND, and I've been astounded by the amount of people that have contacted me and gone, a relative,
So and
close
so
friend.
close, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm talking lots and lots of people that have been affected by MND, whether it's been directly or whether they've been a relative of someone. So obviously you only start to realise that once you diagnose. But it's, there's a lot of people, and it just happens that, there's been 3 rugby players, there's been footballers, like you say, Len John Rose, who unfortunately sadly passed away. Football's not a massive contact sport. It is a strenuous sport on you physically, in terms of fitness. Rugby is as well. So the answer is basically they don't think so. And does it help me? It doesn't really help me. I don't regret playing rugby whatsoever. I don't think it's linked from what the specialists have said. And so it's like going down a rabbit hole, really. I do think a lot about how lucky I am to have the support, and I've played rugby and I've got people around me that want to help me. And we talked about the rugby family, haven't we? On the bike ride, we were talking about how incredible the reaction was. So there's far more positives that come out of rugby that have helped me than anything else, really. So
what does the short term look like? I know we've done the bike ride. We raised 170,000 and rising, is it?
Yeah, well, when we arrived at Kingsholm, it was 155, wasn't it? I woke up the next morning, a friend messaged me, he said it's gone up to 185. So it was like within that, another 30 grand had been added on. But when we started, it was 70. It was at 70 grand, and so we raised over 100 grand, really.
Yeah, which is incredible, really, in such a short space of time. Yeah. And that shows you, because when you watch the news or, you see some people on the bike ride and they're trying to run you off the fucking road, and it was that bloke, get a fucking job. Something like that.
There's one guy that came out and you go, ooh, cycling friends.
Yeah. I was like, I know we look horrendous on the bike, but he saw rave. I thought you had skid marks up your back. I didn't know what it was. It was sweat, apparently.
Yeah, sorry, it's been a bit me. Let's get on to rave.
I was going to tell the story, actually, of Australia when we spent some time there and we ended up in Airlie Beach in the jacuzzi, and that guy's knocking on our apartment door.
It's got any relevance to the bike ride.
The
bike
what
ride.
Is this? Come on.
I whipped out of the jacuzzi. What happened? Well, he's banging the door. Some bloke's banging the door.
For some reason, only goes in a jacuzzi naked.
Okay.
Well, your shorts are dirty. I read something that if you like you go into like an ice bath or a jacuzzi, like why would you take your shorts in your hands or whatever and they've got all the muck and sweat? No.
But well, no, unless I'm thinking more of you got a piece to show off.
Well, don't normally, but this jacuzzi was hot. This is hot.
He's
This
obviously
jacuzzi.
naked.
So that good of mates you don't care, do you?
No, we don't care.
And this guy's banging the door.
He's banging on the door, and I was like, we can't answer that. We're both in the hot tub. He's obviously naked. Next thing, the door's open and this guy's walking in. I've then jumped out of the jacuzzi, put a towel around me. He's come walking towards me, just looks at me, all like frightened in me thing, looks at him, looks down.
Animal.
Sees he's naked, looks back at me. I'm like, oh, it's not like that, mate. And then
He walks off and says animal.
He walked up saying animal.
I just said horse. I don't know. I was happy. We've got a million stories, and it's class, obviously, Rave, that you are here. We've been best mates for many years.
Actually, that is when we
we first met.
Like
Australia.
that exact. So that
Yeah.
2009, he was at East. I was at Manly.
He introduced himself as Sam Raven, Leicester Tigers.
He's such a liar. He's come up to me. All he wants to talk about is Leicester. This young lad from Milton Keynes. And then, mate, that would have been a week later. That story, Airlie Beach.
Yeah.
That'd have been the following week. Ringing Phil Blake, can't play this week, mate.
I was chatting to Geordie.
Yeah.
Big
He's
shout out to
Manly.
Geordie, who is the Gloucester flanker,
Yep.
Geordie Reid, who cooked sausages on the first day, and I felt bad. No one was eating them. No one was eating the sausages. So he's got, what are you making here? And there's about 100 sausages in this bowl. Because no one was eating them, I've smashed 4 of them in. I don't know if they were cooked because I'm feeling sick as a dog after. But what a legend.
He said, Ray said, I've got an instant barbecue. I'll set it up. Brilliant, great idea. Well, by the time we turned up, we were hanging out our backsides, wasn't we? He was in a hut, wasn't he? He was in like a...
It's about 40 degrees.
And I could barely see Geordie because it was that smoky, wasn't it? Do you remember? I was just like, what's on?
I can't eat sausages ever again. I can't eat sausages. Rave, but we've got a million stories that we could tell about me and you. But you're Gloucester Team Manager now. Go on.
They had a rugby operations, but...
Is that the technical term? That was Simon's title, wasn't it? Head of rugby operations.
What, Simon Cohen?
Yeah.
Well, he drove a yellow Porsche.
Focus, mate, and a Sharon.
Well, there you go. So humble. We've got Billy 12 Trees. My respect for that man has gone through the roof after them days because he out my best mate up every single hill. So through the roof. So firstly, I mean, he's not retiring yet. He can't go into finance. Someone said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, not someone." I said, "Bill, what are you doing after rugby?" He said, "Oh, finance."
Doing all of his accountants.
I was like, "Mate, you need to be a fucking Iron Man or something." Like, you cannot go into finance. It will be like, as in, not that you're better than that, but you need you're an outdoorsman. You're a wild man. You're ripped to the bloody chisels. The body needs to be out. But it's his testimonial, the precursor to the Prem. Bloody love the Prem, and Beck ain't happy if I'm playing, but
you said about 5 minutes ago that you're playing.
I am. That's going to be wicked, though, isn't it? Apparently, you were saying off air that Richard Hibbard's going to be playing.
Yeah, he signed up.
He looks like he's eating, Hibbs. He's a bit he's put on a bit. He's gone to his natural weight of 150, it seems.
Well, I think he had a shoulder reconstruction.
Not a reconstruction. He had
not a reconstruction. Yeah, what replacement? He's had a shoulder replacement.
All this, Beck, if you're listening, this is all being fueled in. If Hibbs can play and he's gone to his natural weight
and he can't lift his arm higher than 90 degrees,
who's throwing in then if he can't do that?
Well, he could never throw in the first.
Very true. Very true. I mean, we used to take the Welsh line out to the cleaners. I'll be honest, humbly, but anyway, that's old news. But he's playing.
He's playing. Who else is in the?
I saw the last tweet that me and him are... Well, I thought we were, that me and him were playing 4 and 5, and then when they were at our house the other day, Beck adamantly said that he wasn't playing. I was like, I'm pretty sure...
A lot's happened since then.
I'm pretty sure
I'm back in the Gloucester mix. Yeah.
What did you tell Jim about your training session?
Just getting warmed up, weren't I?
What? Your go-to is kick-offs off the head, is it not? Why you laugh? Is that what happened? Is that what happened?
Your go-to. Did a training session with the lads, didn't I?
What does that entail?
Warm-up. Well, I did the warm-up with Gloucester. Bit of
an energy giver, weren't you?
Energy giver for the lads.
Yeah.
It's a great idea, but Skiver basically said, Ed, unfortunately had to retire and we need to find a replacement. We found a replacement very quickly, and Ravo's rocked up in full kit.
Line out lifters.
How are you pulling it? I sure saw your ass. How are you pulling short? How are they not just dropping straight down?
I genuinely was concerned about the line out lifters because I was like, what sizes do these come in? Because imagine if you go on and just dropping past your knees.
They couldn't lift on his ass. They had to lift on the love handles, didn't they?
Just get him
Hey,
up.
why are we turn like
So
this?
you're nearly 40, mate. You're nearly 40.
No, it's good, mate. Session, few line outs. Went up, few lines off the boys.
I had tendons sore.
The next day, that pitch, it's a lovely pitch.
Hard, though.
The tendons in the front of my knee only went up 5 times. But apparently, Luds was talking it up, I heard.
Ed, what things are in the pipeline Rave? You're going to be involved in some shape or form on a committee? I mean, how does this all work going forward? We can't leave it there.
No, we can't. And the truth is, Nicole, who I mentioned earlier, has been shit hot. And she's come up with kind of a timeline of events and ideas that she think would work. And I need to go through them with her. She said she'd let me finish a bike ride and settle down a bit. So I've actually got to speak to her this week about what that looks like. But again, now my arse has recovered and my legs aren't heavy anymore. I'm suddenly going, well, I need to do something else. Again, under the guise that I'm physically capable. and I want to enjoy it. I enjoyed that bike ride so much that. What do you want to do next, Jim? Are you in or?
Well, the BBC interview after that edited it so bad that it made out like I ain't doing anything again. Like,
Was that the bit though where you'd gone like John had asked you, hadn't he? And was it at Kingsholm?
at Kingsholm,
Would you?
he said, "Would you get back on the bike tomorrow?"
And you went no.
I
and
said
then
no.
You said actually, the bit after you went actually no, I'd do it again tomorrow.
But they edited it to where in the studio he was like, I asked the lads, "Was it all worth it?" And it then pans to me, and I say no. I was like, "Mate, you completely stitched me. Like, that's not the question you asked me. Was it worth it? You asked me whether or not I'd jump on the bike tomorrow. I said no, but if Slate's asked me, then yes. So maybe only I saw that, but I was horrified.
No, I saw that
I
bit.
saw
I didn't
that.
see the. I didn't see the. Was it worth it?
The
No.
edited bit. Yeah.
No, it
Oh
wasn't.
God.
He's
But-
an arsehole, and I don't want to be near him again.
Yeah, but I'll jump on a bike again. Personally, I loved it. Being part of such a good group of boys.
Yeah.
And mate, whatever is next, like I'm in. It's. But I know the old hashtags and stuff like that, and I know we've got the Just Giving page which we'll post and stuff. But
Yeah.
is there a website sorted yet, or will there be? I know we've got the hashtag for Ed.
Yeah.
We're going to post a load of stuff on there in terms of that. But can we point anyone into the direction, Slates, if they want to support? If
My intention around that is, like I said to you, it's kind of twofold. It's raising awareness of the disease and also the work that Doddy does and the MNDA as well, but particularly Doddy because they've been fantastic for me personally. So my energy will be going into those guys because they're doing incredible amount of work that I don't, like I said earlier in the pod, that I don't think I need to do separately from them. I need to support what Dodd is doing already. So that will be the aim of the fundraising and the awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Slates, we're here with you, as in from the podcast standpoint, the rugby pod, but being part of that cycle and everything. I know in the grand scheme of things, it can, might seem superficial, but we're there. And you mentioned hope. We're all hoping, and we'll make sure that this and your story and, the MND story gets out there as far and wide as possible, and to the government level as well, because ultimately what it comes down to is funding and research and all these things. So we're going to do everything we can. We desperately try to keep pushing that message, but bloody enjoyed that. It was great. Ravo, welcome to my work, mate. This is it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, cheers, Slates. It was class.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having us, Jim.